Edition of Off Track with Carruthers and Bice. You can probably tell that this is not Carruthers, our communications manager at MotoAmerica. This is Bice. I'm going to now say hello to Mr. Carruthers. Hi, Paul.
Hey, how are you doing, Sean? It's almost it is the holiday season. How's the shopping been? I think I actually finished last night, which is amazing because this is normally about when I even think about starting.
You know, I've been doing pretty well so far, but you know, it's funny. I know we sometimes bore our listeners with weather, but the weather from between Southern California and here is so different. And I don't usually like snow, but we do have a pretty picturesque situation here. We got a little bit of snow, and it was heavy enough that it's stuck on all the branches. So it feels like Christmas, except that I couldn't get out and do any shopping last night because of the roads. But I guess New England got hammered. They're getting like in the Binghamton area of New York, they got like 3 feet of snow. So,
wow.
Yeah, which I don't want that. Ours will be gone in a couple of days. But
anyway, this is probably kind of odd, but I've never had a white Christmas.
Oh wow.
You know, because when I grew up in Australia, Christmas is actually the middle of summer.
That's true, yeah.
And then obviously in Southern California, we just don't, we don't have it. So it's probably pretty rare.
It's just like a postcard to you or a movie or something. It's not real.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Yeah. All right. So let's get our guest on here. I am so excited about this. I mean, I have been talking to myself about this for quite some time. We've got Keith McCarty on, who is retiring from Yamaha. He started on January 3rd, 1977 at Yamaha. He actually worked for a few years with Suzuki and worked with a couple riders, including Tony DiStefano. So he won some races and did a lot of work for Suzuki. But his claim to fame really started in 1977 when he came to Yamaha and worked with Bob Hanna. And, he stayed. Hanna moved on. Keith stayed and became race division manager and the man in charge of everything. Not just motocross, supercross, but also ATV racing, side-by-side stuff. And we're going to talk to him mostly about road racing because obviously we're a road racing organization. And he's got quite a legacy in that too. So, I don't want to keep talking about it. We need to ask him stuff. But I tell you, I've asked Keith a million questions in my lifetime, but I've saved a few for this podcast. So I'm looking forward to asking him some things that I don't think I've ever asked him before. So let's bring him on.
It's funny because as you know, with my father and everything, I mean, I've grown up. I mean, it's always been Yamaha. I mean, at least most of my dad's career as at the end of his career as a racer, and then after that as a crew chief, it was always for the most part Yamaha. And it's funny how Yamaha and Keith McCarty go together like it's hard to think of anybody that's more associated with one brand than he is. You mentioned the Suzuki thing, but that doesn't even register on my radar for some reason. I just think of Keith as being Yamaha and Yamaha, every team that Yamaha's ever had Keith seems to be somewhat a big part of that. So
yeah,
it's cool.
Absolutely. So let's bring him on. Hello, Keith. And I want to say to you, so it was January 3rd, 1977. It's not going to be quite 44 years, but I think even though January 3rd, 2021 is a Sunday, I think you ought to walk into that race shop and say, 44 years, baby, drop the mic and just walk out. So how are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you, Sean. And hello, Paul.
Hello.
Yeah, doing good.
Okay, so I've got to ask the first question.
Okay.
And because this is one of my favorite racers and when I was growing up and everything, he was like the bomb. But is Bob Hanna the craziest son of a bitch you've ever worked with or not?
Well, if he isn't, he ranks right up to the top, I think. He's, I don't know that I'd call him crazy. He's pretty methodical, right. Crazy would mean that he's super impulsive without a lot of thought, and that's the opposite of Bob.
That's true.
It does, it's calculated, and he's It's kind of like that journalist thing. Don't ask you a question that you don't already know the answer for. Well, he's never going to make a bet that he doesn't know he can win. So, you gotta be careful and just pay attention. Otherwise, he'll get the best of you.
Keith, it's funny about, your time with Tony DiStefano and how you went to Yamaha. When you first went there, were you going there with the intention that you were going to be working with Bob? And what did you know about Bob Hanna before essentially before your first day there?
Yeah, so, as you mentioned, I worked at Suzuki before and the motocross stuff. And, just for facts here, during that period when I was at Suzuki, I also helped Irv Kanemoto out when he was Gary Nixon's crew chief while he rode for Suzuki. Yes. But anyway, Bob rode for Suzuki as well in their pro support department while I was in the professional side working with Tony DiStefano. So we actually knew each other a little bit from there. And, I knew enough that he was winning all the local things. And by the time that I was offered the job at Yamaha, he had been at Yamaha for a year, won the 1976 125 championship. And so, yeah, I knew I was going there to work with him and, was expecting it to be a good thing.
Yeah, I'd for sure say it was. And it's funny with Bob because, back then you guys kind of did everything, didn't you? I mean, it's amazing the difference. Bob was in the early days of Supercross. It was so different than what it is now. And it was you guys in a box van and you kind of had to do everything for him, right? I mean, you wrenched for him, but you also did all kinds of stuff. And that certainly prepared you for your career as it's continued that we'll talk about. But obviously you had to be his sort of, I won't say psychiatrist, but his mentor, the guy to talk to him. And you were also advocating for him within Yamaha, I'm sure. Is that kind of how it worked, that you were kind of all things to Bob in the beginning?
Absolutely. I think the industry, that was kind of the way that it worked, that the rider-mechanic relationship was pretty tight. And we didn't have big, giant crews of people, there were just a few. And it was every guy for himself in those days. So, yeah, we were pretty close and, had each other's back. And we worked hard and played hard, So it was a very special time.
Well, I'm going to keep going. I thought Paul might have a question, but
I'm sorry. I was spacing out.
That's all right. I'm going to keep going because I want to talk about this a little bit. I think we're going to jump around a little bit, Keith, because I mean, you know from dealing with me, I do tend to jump around a little bit when I'm talking to you about various things. But one of the things that I was thinking about, and I'm working on a story for the website. I'm going to give the fans, well, the story should be out before the podcast is on, before this is live. But one of the things that occurred to me, I'm sure we've talked about this, but so you started out with Bob Hurricane Hanna, and you didn't really end with Josh Hurricane Hayes, but I would say those two riders, I mean, certainly I'm not going to take anything away from Cameron Beaubier's 5 championships, but, in terms of guys and the gravity of the people, it seems like Bob and Josh in a lot of ways are sort of similar. And it's interesting how they kind of bookended your career, but also they both had the same nickname of Hurricane for different reasons. But I just thought that was kind of a cool parallelism for your career. Have you ever thought about that how Bob and Josh sort of had some similarities in that way?
No, not till you brought it up, but I think you're right. I think you're right in some instances. Bob was a really hard-working guy, and but that was probably the reason for a lot of his success, because he just worked very, very hard. And, the word give up wasn't in his vocabulary, so he would leave it all out there on the track, and usually it went in his favor, and Josh Hayes, again, I think he worked for everything that he got, on the track, and, definitely figured out what worked for him and stuck to it. And so in that parallel, they were both very, very similar.
It's got to be, Sean mentioned Cameron, and we should talk about that as well, obviously. But does it make you particularly proud when you feel like you're I mean, you basically were there for him and brought him into Yamaha as a very young man. And then you've watched him progress both on the racetrack and personally and professionally. I mean, it's got to make you proud. It's almost, some of these guys probably feel a little bit like their sons to you. Is that accurate?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it doesn't just start with Josh and say Cameron. I mean, Garrett Gerloff and JD Beach, and there's a host of other guys. When we got things rolling along with MotoAmerica, that first year, and we had all these guys that were so talented, and like always, there's only a few seats available for people, and you're trying to look through and see the ones that are going to survive and continue to grow. And we've been very blessed to have guys that their careers have continued to bloom, so I'm super proud of all of these guys. And Cameron, for sure, he this step in his career going to Europe is a big deal. And I coined it, it's kind of like quitting smoking, the right time to do it. It's not, you can't do it every day. And I think Cam had to figure out when was right, when his life was all lined up, and to do these things. And it seems, I think he waited for the right time here. It's going to be really fun to watch.
And I think, I think kudos to you and Yamaha for, and a lot like Wayne and MotoAmerica, it's kind of a catch-22. We have these young guys, they come up, they have success in MotoAmerica, and then it's kind of funny that we want them to leave because it's good for their careers, and it also ends up ultimately being good for MotoAmerica. And I think you guys deserve the same sort of praise, because you actually, I know, were a big help in getting Garrett to be able to go to World Superbike, and obviously, letting Cameron out of his contract so that he could go pursue the Moto2 deal. But I think that just all comes full circle at some point, and it's got a nice little fuzzy feeling to it, but it makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we're really proud to be a part of it and to be able to make it work that way, So we have ultimately the best in mind for them and their career and their livelihoods. And in turn, it repays Yamaha too. Ideally, they end up back on Yamahas when they get over there, and the whole cycle just continues. So new kids get on the teams, and look towards moving up just like these guys did. So it's exciting.
Keith, there's a photo that I took of you in 2013 at Daytona, and we're either going to have it posted with our promotion for this podcast, or it's going to go in the story that I'm working on. But I've never talked to you about this photo, but it's one of my favorites, and it's in the pit box, and it's a very young Garrett Gerloff and a very young Cameron Beaubier sitting in chairs, and you're kneeled down in front of them. And
yes.
It just looks like it's that all eyes on me. It's like a basketball coach, and you're giving him a pregame speech. And I was always fascinated with that photo. So I've never actually asked you what you were saying to those guys. So I've got a 2-part question to that. What were you saying to those guys? And can you tell me, are motocross, supercross riders the same as road racers? Is their mentality the same? So it's kind of 2-part question. So tell us what you were telling them at that moment, if you wouldn't mind.
Okay, so I remember the photo, and but to be quite honest, I don't remember verbatim what the conversation was about. But clearly, it was the start of the Daytona 200, I think, and there was some strategies that we were hopefully employing, and we're just talking about the race and how it would unfold, and and just what to expect. I think as best I could, right? And they were like sponges, I think you asked this question about motocross riders and road racers and their similarities, but I think you could expand that to athletes in general. And I'd say the analogy that I would put, or the way I see it, is they're all somewhat insecure from time to time. Different times in their career, those insecurities hold them back, or and if you know how to help them, then you can unlock some things as well. And so I think it's super important from let's say the support side, or the coaching side, or mentor side, that you acknowledge that they don't always have it together, and sometimes they need a little help to figure it out. So I think that everybody likes to know that people are in their corner and they support them through the good and the bad. And I think that those guys in particular, all of our road race guys, knew that they got the full support of Yamaha and everybody that was part of the team. So
another thing I want to talk to you about, Keith, and I think I've mentioned this to you before, but I want to go back a little bit to, a little bit earlier days in road racing when you were fully involved in the road racing team after Larry Griffiths retired. And I'm thinking back to Anthony Gobert. And, I think I've always said throughout Anthony's career, supreme talent, obviously had some issues, but it seemed like when he was with Yamaha, he was some of his best results and some of his best days. Somehow you were able to get something out of Anthony and kind of get him to toe the line more than I'd ever seen or any of us had ever witnessed in his career. I always felt like that was a real testament to your abilities because of how you got him to do some pretty incredible things, including that race that we talked to Tom Halverson about where he came from nowhere in the rain in Elkhart Lake and won that race that one year. But aside from that, he did some amazing things, and you got him in a real good place for that time period. Can you talk about your time with Anthony Gobert a little bit?
Yeah, I think I do. I don't recall every sort of moment, but I know that it was a lot of time spent with him to really get his trust. I think during that period of Anthony's life, most people around him were more like I don't know, like father figures that were there to discipline, and that really wasn't my role. It was really to get him to trust somebody and try to see that what doing the right thing could do for his career as opposed to the way he'd been going all along. And while we were able to create some good times, there were still times when Anthony liked to get off and celebrate a little bit more than normal, and so it required a lot of I don't know, just being there, right or wrong, trying to do the right thing for him and help him as much as I could. So it's one of those ones where you celebrate the victories, but when you look back, you always wish you could have done more. And again, just I'm just one person and everything. There's a lot of things going on in his life that were entrenched long before I got to be a part of it. But we did have a good relationship, and I'm thankful for the time that we made good things happen.
Okay, I've got a Sean Bice 2-part question for you.
Okay.
Looking back, I mean, one of the natural things to do when you're ending a career and retiring is to look back. When you look back, what part of your career or what specific thing are you most proud of, and what thing would you, if you could do it over again, you would do differently?
Well, I don't know that there's only any one thing that I would have done differently. Probably multiple things, Keep in mind that, that for most of us in this industry, we kind of learned as we go. There wasn't some big formal training that people had to do the things that they did. But, again, I honestly try not to look back too much. Because it's more important what I'm doing going forward, and I remember some of the mistakes that I made in terms of a bad day at the track from wrenching or saying something to somebody that you wish you wouldn't have said, but you can't take it back, or, any of those types of things. I don't know that it's just related to a career as much of a life for any of us, but I am proud of, working with a group of people, and, there were some really special moments and how they taught me more than they probably ever realized, I think I pride myself on being able to learn from other people as much as hopefully they're learning from me. And that's kind of why this team effort worked very, very well for me, But yeah, I don't really like looking back too much, to be quite honest. I can't remember a lot of it these days because I never really looked back like that. It was like winning that first championship with Josh Hayes. The moment we won it, we were already for me, I was having to think about number 2 and beyond. And I think when I have looked back during that period and said, holy crap, how did I blink an eye and we've got 3 championships or 4 championships under our belt, and I remember feeling we were just trying to get that first one. So that's probably the one time I didn't really expect to see the dominance or the, that we had as a team. But I will tell you a story that, and I know I said it more than once to the team, was that my daughter was playing fast pitch softball. She was part of a team called Gordon's Panthers, and that team was a group of 16 to 18-year-old girls, and they won the national softball championship. I think the team record was 13 in a row or 12 in a row, something like that. And when you stop and think about dynasties like that, the underlying factor is that the coaching staff, along with the parents, they were never thinking about losing. They were always thinking about winning. And these girls did phenomenal jobs. And I think the one time they didn't win, they finished in second. So, I just know we went through a lot of things over the 11 years or 10 years of road race championships. We had guys come and go, and trying to convince the team that the team's never about one person. And those were the words that we used, and we're able to have some of our best guys leave and get new guys and continue to win. So I don't know. I think for me, I want to think forward of the next chapter, and I'm very happy with where I've been and who I've been associated with, and the accomplishments we've all had together.
All right, well, let's jump forward then. Sean, myself, you, anybody involved in motorcycle racing, there's a big sacrifice as far as a lot of the work takes place on weekends. What's a weekend gonna? Well, you know what, the weekends and the weeks are going to be the same for you now. But what is life going forward? What's that going to consist of for Keith McCarty?
Well, that's a great question. Right now, it's just spending more time with my wife and our kids and grandkids. My son has a couple of pit bulls that we found as a new breed of dog that we just love being around, and so whenever we get to have them, it's they consume our life a little bit with going to the park and keep them exercised and keeping their minds stimulated and healthy. And so we're doing a lot of that, but we're kind of thinking about whether we really want to do now that we're going to have this time and you don't have to answer to anybody. We're going to put a little traveling in our future here, which would be fun, and go visit some guys that we haven't seen for a while and get to spend some time without having to be scheduled. So I don't have that nailed down just yet, but I think it's going to look something like that. I hope.
It's tough to say, right? I'm sure Keith, it's going to be hard for you to slow down a little bit, but you mentioned spending more time with your wife, Vicky, and I want to mention Vicky for a minute. She's one of my favorite people, as you know, and always love seeing her at the races. I talked to her, I don't even know how it came up among our conversations a few years ago. I remember her telling me that, and I'm going to put you on the spot with this, Keith. This is something I don't know if I've ever told you or ever asked you about, but Vicky told me, I might have asked her, but she said anyway, that she really thinks that you enjoyed road racing, possibly even more than motocross and supercross. That in the beginning, you transitioned, but you came to really love it. The whole thing about the weekends, the way they were, the build up to the races. And like I said, I'm putting you on the spot. I know you're known as much for, motocross and supercross and everything else at Yamaha, but she seemed to think that you really did enjoy your time within the road racing paddock, and we sure enjoyed you. That's for sure.
Yeah. I think I would say that, especially these last 10 or 11 years or whatever it's been, and partly because anytime you get to build something, when I don't know what's the right terminology, took over or really got more deeply involved in the road race side, there's a lot of change going on, not just from Yamaha standpoint, but the industry itself, we went through the DMG era and the MotoAmerica era, started and then our own team and what we were able to do. And yeah, being able to make a difference, especially those early years with the R1 where the bike was, number 4 in sales when we started, but after we won, it shot to number 1 in sales, and so that was a really good thing for Yamaha as a company. It gave my, vision, I guess, credibility, because at that time, I think I had a bit of a free rein in terms of what we were doing. Dennis McNeil was my boss and was very, agreeable to directions that I wanted to have. And so from the team side, getting the guys to respect my opinion and the direction. And, it's like you've heard of that thing, is you're in the boat steering and you're asking everybody to paddle like hell to an undisclosed destination. And so to get everybody to buy into that and have success, I mean, it just doesn't get any better. And then the hospitality side of it, of, creating a space for these guys to unwind and have a decent meal, not just have sandwiches and, hamburgers and stuff, or bratwurst at the track. I mean, those were, I think anybody that's been in this and been around our team during that time, it's going to go down as the best time they've ever had in that paddock, I think. So for me, being part of that and, working with all the people that we did and doing the fun stuff from marketing to sponsorship stuff to whatever, heck yeah, that was, it was every bit as good as the first 15 years of my life in motocross. So, probably because it's the most recent, it stands out more right now. So,
okay, we've mentioned JD Beach and Garrett Gerloff and Cameron, and one of the things that's changed, in our time is, and in Yamaha recently, because they carried it on longer than anybody, but there was always a superbike team and then a super sport team. And you guys utilized that to perfection, because you brought young guys like Garrett and JD and Cameron through the system to get them to superbikes. Those 600 programs are gone now. Do you think that's going to be a real detriment as far as like moving guys through a system to ultimately get them to superbikes?
Absolutely, I do. One of the things, like that style or that system was something that we had in motocross for a number of years, right? We had the 250 teams that were usually regional classes, and we could have a much broader cast of riders to look over, and then, narrow them down into the guys who would make the move into the 450 team. So if you recall back, we not only used our Graves team or our 600 team, we were fortunate enough to have guys like Amin, who had Joe Roberts out there, and Danny Walker with Jake Gagne. There's a number of young guys. And for me, I felt like all of those guys were our Yamaha riders, even though we weren't directly contracted with them. I think we helped in some way during that period of bonuses and, whatever we could do. If they won, we recognized their wins with posters, or so, we really utilized that methodology of moving guys along in broader ways than most people realize. We were just fortunate that more guys rode Yamahas. And so I remember having this conversation with Josh and Melissa, because Melissa had no idea that we were looking that far beyond just our own paddock lines, that I took personal stake in these guys and wanted the best. So I remember even when Joe Roberts left the paddock to go to Europe, it's kind of a sad moment, because there was a really talented guy that we just had no space to move it, and the paddock wasn't strong enough at the time to provide another opportunity for him either. So I think that not having that 600 class, or at least that stepping stone, is going to slow down the progression of the very top guys. Could work out to where, all of the guys in Europe, when things are slowing down there and they want to come to MotoAmerica, where the top class is strong, but it's not necessarily strong with new talent. It's strong with big names, which are also very important to the sport, to have the attraction of the big name coming to race on the U.S. soil. Those are really good things too, but they're not sustainable like having the youth come through, So I'm hopeful that it continues to work. I hope our economy stays strong and things get good. But I can't help but believe that that'll be slowed down just a little bit.
Hey Keith, I think this is a question that I think you're the perfect person to ask this question to. We've had this come up with our fans who don't really understand some of the things, the inner workings of how things are in road racing or any kind of racing, motorcycle racing or any type of racing. But for within our realm, we've seen, especially with Yamaha, there have been times where there's been a factory effort and then there's been a factory supported effort. It even happened with Yamaha. I mean, there was a time where you guys essentially gave everything to a support team and helped them out and provided them, and also at times provided, like a bike for Jeremy McGrath that was built by the factory or the race shop in Cyprus. But, we've just come off this time period where Yamaha had a quote factory road racing team officially in MotoAmerica, and now it's gone to Attack Performance. And we kind of look at it and say, I mean, it doesn't seem all that different. I mean, I know internally it probably is, but, for the way it's structured now, Jake Gagne is a contracted employee through Yamaha, rider through Yamaha, just like he was, or Cameron was with the factory effort. Can you talk about how Yamaha has gone in and out of that factory versus factory supported? And does it really make a big difference to the fans or to the quality of the racing or any of that?
Well, I mean, those decisions happen for a lot of different reasons. I mean, it starts with the management, let's say the president of the company and his beliefs in racing and how they should be run. And clearly when it's a full factory effort, the expense side of it is, much more than a shared effort like these support type teams are. So, I think that has some impact on it. And as far as, it doesn't seem that much different from the outside. A lot of that is by design, that, they want the same look and feel to the racing community to be the same as it was when it was a factory effort. And clearly the results and everything, we've been very lucky with some of these satellite groups that we share as much as we have to share with them, and they have the ability to take the very best of what's there and available and put it all to good use. So I think that, there's probably a lot of benefits to having these satellite type teams as opposed to just the factory being involved. May make it easier for the factory to help more people that way than just doing their own factory team as we've had. But, usually those decisions start with the president, and then they just kind of work down from there. And the current president, Yamaha, believes strongly in these satellite teams. He's an advocate for racing as well, but I think he wants to be fiscally responsible too with the state of the business and such. So, but so far it's working good. And as you may know, in motocross now, we've gone to Star Racing being our satellite team for 450 and 250 team. So, they've been very successful, and I think there's a strong indication that they'll continue to be successful, going forward. So,
that's one of the things for the consumers or the fans out there. I mean, they get this idea that, if it's a factory supported team, so the bikes aren't going to be the most badass available. I, from what I understand, disagree with that. Is it from a fan's point of view, is it any different? Is the product the same, whether it's factory or factory supported?
Well, I think honestly that, the restrictions that the private team have may be less than what the factory team has, So, I mean, I think there's always this belief within the industries that the factories are gonna do things that they shouldn't be doing, or they get things that nobody else can get. And there may have been a day when that was true, and there may be series where that is true. But in today's world, I'd say that the satellite teams of today have more autonomy than ever before, and you know, they can do things different, which in some cases is better than what a factory team could do. You know, so I think that as far as the spectator goes, they just want to see great racing. They want to see guys that are competitive and their favorite teams win, and whatever happens, between the pit boxes, doesn't really matter. They just want to see great racing, and the companies want to have their brand, being out front. So.
And this is a follow-up to that, Keith. 2015, which I should have said at the beginning of this podcast, 2015 was the year that you were inducted into the AMA Hall of Fame for obvious reasons, and a testament to your 44 years with Yamaha and beyond that in the motorcycle industry. So I want to make sure I mention that. But in 2015, when the MotoAmerica era began, personally, I was particularly proud of the fact that Yamaha had a commitment to MotoAmerica. Suzuki did too, and was all in on having MotoAmerica get started. And because of Yamaha's involvement, and Suzuki as well, it helped launch MotoAmerica, and it's led to the growth that we're experiencing now. And I understand it's a corporate decision, but obviously it was spearheaded by you and your commitment to road racing, your commitment to U.S. racing, and continuing getting involved and going all in with MotoAmerica. And as you mentioned, the profile of Yamaha within the paddock, with the transporter, the hospitality, everything that Yamaha provided showed it to be a first-class operation. And that's a huge testament to your commitment to racing. So with that long preamble, I want to ask you about something that we've been, trying to get for the longest time, and it's involvement from Honda, it's involvement from Kawasaki. Obviously Ducati started to get involved a little bit more, and they are all involved from a product standpoint, for sure. Most of them have contingency involved, so there is in factory involvement from that way. But for the fans who wonder about those days when all the factories were in on road racing and really aren't as much now, can you speak to that? And is it just a different time? And do you foresee any of these other OEMs getting back in and getting more involved in MotoAmerica as time goes by, based on kind of the model that Yamaha and Suzuki developed with the beginning of MotoAmerica?
Yeah, it's hard to speak for these other companies, as to what they're thinking. I think a big part of it is the management side, whether they believe racing can help the product image. If you were talking about Honda, I think that they probably feel like their image is strong without their motorcycle teams, because they're a car company and their MotoGP team, and all of the things that they do around the world. They might think that that's enough, but I guess as long as the people keep buying their products and show them that it's enough, then my guess is they probably won't get involved. But I think there's a lot more power from the people that buy their products than they realize, by talking to their dealer and letting the companies know that they really want them to be involved in racing, and put some pressure on them. But the Kawasaki, I think, has a program, or a small program and stuff, where they're getting involved in the amateur side a little bit, and for us, with the help of Chuck Graves, we started turning around Yamaha's interest in things the very same way, going to those amateur events and getting more people on your brand, and then those people wanting to move on to the next level. And so I think when those voices get loud enough to the companies and they realize that they need to step up, I'm hopeful that they will. I feel bad because I think the racing could be better, and more racing means more sponsors and all that kind of stuff, and that's how the sport's going to grow. But I I don't really know what it holds, to be honest. And a lot of it depends on the product lines that everybody's coming up with, and we'll have to wait and see. I hope so. I just don't know.
All right, guys. I think we've exhausted Keith enough, and I just
I know one thing. We put the dogs to sleep here. They're snoring away here on the bed.
Well, some of those long questions that Sean asks, I mean, I dozed off once or twice, and I know you probably did too. So, you shouldn't be too hard on the dogs.
Yeah, no, it's good. No, I really appreciate you guys wanting to do this and everything. I'm here whenever you need something. If you have a question, don't hesitate to call. So far, I have the same cell number. I hope to keep it, but sure, whatever happens, I'll let you guys know what's going on, and ideally, we'll be able to come to a race or two next year and see what's going on.
Yeah, well, I wanted to take a minute to thank you for your support of MotoAmerica, and also for your support of me professionally and over the years. I mean, when I was at Cycle News, I never hesitated to come and talk to you and get a quote from you, whether your day was good or your day was bad. You always treated me fairly and gave me what I needed. So I won't forget that, and I appreciate that. And if you do, if you want to come to a MotoAmerica race, I think we might be able to get you a pretty decent pass.
Perfect. Yeah, that's one of the perks of the Hall of Fame guys. I get
that's right.
All these organizations now. So
there you go.
You're good.
Yeah, and on top of what Paul said, and I'm not trying to be a story topper, but Keith, for me, I mean, having worked for you, I just want to say that was an honor. I learned a lot. I still continue to learn a lot from you, and I still consider you a person that when I need to have a stable thinking person to straighten me out, I can get in touch with you.
Yeah. There you go. Perfect.
Yeah.
And you know me, Sean, I'm happy to help you.
Yeah, I've always appreciated that. You're awesome. So, hey, we're going to wrap it up. I got to do a couple bits of business here. So we've got a MotoAmerica giveaway that's going on right now. And we talked about it in the last podcast, but we want everybody to know there's four different prizes involved. In the top is a banner that's signed by Wayne and all the champions this year, as well as a lot of the other riders in the paddock. Second place is a couple weekend tickets to a MotoAmerica event. Third is a season-long pass to Live Plus, our streaming service. And fourth is a merchandise care package. And we've been showing some of the stuff we've got for merchandise lately. And there's a bunch of different ways to enter. One of the ways is to subscribe to this podcast, Off Track with Carruthers and Bice. So we hope you'll do that. And the other thing that we want to let you know coming up is we're going to have a holiday, right around the holiday promotion that's starting in a couple of days, and you get up to 25% off select tickets at particular events, not all of them, but certain events, and it's some of the real big ones that we have during the year. And that's a right around Christmas type thing. It's a perfect gift to give to somebody or give to yourself, stocking stuffer, however you want to do it. But like I said, it's 25% off, and there will be a code that you put in when you go on our website. So I just wanted to get those 2 points across, and I think Keith can appreciate it because Keith is quite a marketing mind, as well as a race guy and a strategic guy and a rider's mentor. So Keith, I'm sure you don't mind a little bit of plugging at the end of this, right?
Not at all. I think it's awesome that you guys are doing that and know how to keep everybody enthusiastic, even when we're not racing, so they can get all dressed up and be at the track with their best MotoAmerica gear on.
There you go. All right. Thanks so much, Keith.
Hey, by the way, just one last thing. I know you guys were talking about doing your Christmas shopping, how you weren't able to get out there.
Yeah.
Well, that was one of the nice things about Vicky is I don't have to leave the house to go do it. She's taking care of our Christmas shopping, so I can be involved with the dogs.
Well, you're spoiled.
The woman is a saint. She's a saint. I say that all the time.
That's good.
Okay.
That's good.
All right, you guys.
All right,
Thank
guys.
you very much. Have a good holiday.
Yeah, you too.